Woman Shannon Grove, and it's my honor to participate in this Cattle Woman's video documenting the legacy and the history of California's ranching families, especially the 150-year history right here in Kern and Tulare County. So Sheila, tell me about the California Cattle Women.
Well, California Cattle Women is an organization that's made up of 30 local units around the state of California. The very first unit was Kern County, and they started in 1948. In 1951, we began our state organization, which is now called California Cattle Women. When it first started, it was called California Cowbells, because our women that were from ranching families called themselves the Bells, the Cowbells. So it was kind of a cute name for the start of our organization. And then in 1987, we changed to California Cattle Women. We're an organization that is largely engaged in beef promotion and education. It was a chance for ranch women to get to know each other better, because when you live a ways apart, and sometimes you're only getting together once or twice a year.
My history does go back, and my husband's both longtime Kern County cattle ranchers, and I am a Twisselman, and you and I have a connection there because your dad worked on the Twisselman Ranch for many years and was an excellent
ranch hand,
ranch hand, and horseman. And then also my husband's family, the Sneddons, started out over on the east side of Kern County in 1867. So next year will be our 150th year in cattle business in Kern County.
And you still operate a cattle ranch?
Still operate a cattle ranch, and we are in the 6th generation of Sneddon family there. And we moved over into the southwest of the county in the 1916. So the location where I am now will be 100 years this year.
In Alameda, people would come into San Francisco on ships with the gold rush, and they'd have horses there. They could buy a saddle horse for $1,000 in 1849, and then ride those. They would sell those horses, and then guys could take those horses up into the gold country. So that was how he got started out here. So he came in 49. So.
Now that's Guy Engle.
That is David Engle.
David Engle.
David Engle, yes.
And that's who Mona was sharing that came over, drove the first cattle over Greenhorn Mountain.
Yes.
Now, how are they connected to you and your family?
Okay, I am the 6th generation of our family to live on our ranch. And David and his wife Elvira were the 1st generation. So It's David and Elvira, and then their oldest was Frances Elizabeth, and she married R.L. Stockton, and then they started the Horseshoe Ranch, which basically the Horseshoe Ranch was a gift from David to his oldest daughter, Frances. And she was kind of a tomboy. Her nickname was Frank. She ran the ranch with the boys. R.L. was the first superintendent of schools in Kern County. That was her husband. He was originally from Santa Rosa. In that area.
But Francis ran the ranch.
Francis ran the ranch. He was superintendent of schools. He was a teacher at 18.
Okay.
And Francis was his oldest student in his class. And they got married, and they started their portion, the Horseshoe Ranch, in 1866 when they got married in December of 1885.
And you gave me this in the beginning, and this is their original brand that they petitioned for.
Yes.
Quarter Circle T.
Yes.
Okay, so it kind of looks like a C and a T, but and it was on the 2nd day of January, 1886.
Yeah, that's when they got married.
And that's your family history of the ranch that you still live on today.
Yes.
Yes.
My parents actually live in the ranch house that R.L. and Francis built.
Really? In the original house?
Yes.
Now, have they added on or anything?
Yes, they have. They've modernized. They have, electricity and all that
running
kind of
water.
stuff. Running water, yes.
We didn't have trucks. We had no source of hay.
You just Drove them to the...
You drove them to the railroad or to the packing house.
And when drove them, you mean you actually were on
Horses.
horseback and kind of guided
and
them?
they camped on the way, and they would drive them either to the railroad in Delano or they'd drive them to the packing house in Bakersfield.
How long would a trip like that take?
Well, going into Bakersfield from where I live, see, I live a lot closer to town than here, it would take 2 days.
And how long does it take to drive today?
About 25 minutes.
About 25 minutes.
Yes.
But it would take you guys 2
2
days
days
to drive your cattle down.
That's right, and they drove them right down the Kern River to the Kern River and went down H Street and to the packing house. Of course, there was nothing out there on H Street then. It was just bare land. There was no houses or anything, you know. And you usually would try to get some neighbors and all drive in at the same time for help. And also, they'd take their cattle. So you'd get 2 or 3 neighbors.
And I just want to reiterate for the people listening is that when you say drive them in, you're talking about people on horseback.
Yes.
And camping overnight.
Yes.
And actually, cattle drive.
It was.
It was a cattle drive.
But you may have like 3 different ranches cattle because they would get together. So they were small ranches in here. You'll hear some of them talk about bigger ranches, but we were considered a small ranch.
So if you combined all those cattle, explain to people that are listening to this how you separated them at the end.
Well, when they got to the feedlot, they had corrals, and you just got in there with your horses. They were branded, and you separated them by the brand. But we have a short green season in this country. I was thinking about in the Midwest and further back. They run cows to an acre. Like if you had 1 acre, you could run 5 cows.
Okay.
Here, you run acres to the cow. The government says it takes 20 acres here to run a cow.
1 cow.
1 cow. So if you have...
Is that just in California?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because further east, see, they can run 5 cows to an acre. But they have green year-round.
Oh, okay.
See, we don't. We have a very short green season here. And then it's dry. But if you compare us, 20 acres for my cow, that guy back east can run 100.
Exactly.
And they claim the average cattle ranch is 50 acres. But out here, no. The West is very different than the rest of the country. And Printer, everything you read has been written by somebody in the East or the Midwest, and they don't realize California, Arizona, Nevada, they're dry countries.
So tell me about the history of the ranch.
Well, the family, my husband's family came to California in 1850, and they were up in the Motherlode country.
What is the Motherlode country?
Well, around Sonora, Angels Camp, that country.
Okay.
And they, the men came down here in I think it was 68, and really liked the country, and they went back and got their family and their cattle, and came down, and there'd been a fire, so where they were going, they couldn't.
Oh.
And so they spent a year, at least a year, maybe 2 years in the lower country down out of Granite at a big mine that was down there, and worked down there and camped out, basically.
Okay.
But the women came up here, they came up here in the summertime and ran their cattle, and eventually they settled right here.
So now when people, I want to say lay people, like people like in Los Angeles or San Diego, they hear terminologies like they ran their cattle. What does that mean to someone?
Well, that's probably an odd term, maybe. Their cattle were out in pastures, and of course in that time things weren't fenced.
Right.
So they had to kind of watch them more, to gather them back in. They around the waters and stuff.
So basically on horseback.
Horseback,
They would keep their cattle all in a certain area because there weren't fences.
There weren't fences.
Okay.
But they'd have big roundups every once in a while with people in the neighborhood and all that, and sort their cattle out.
Let me ask you this. What's your day? What time do you get up?
I usually get up around 5:45, and I live in what used to be my great-grandparents' old house. And on a normal schedule, everybody comes over for coffee around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. So my grandpa, my aunt, and my dad, and anybody else who might be helping us that day, and they come over and we have some coffee and kind of get our day lined out and go from there.
So what's a typical day?
It depends on the seasons. We're really fortunate. We still use horses a lot with our operation, and so like right now we're getting into the fall. We still have a lot of cattle up in the high country on permit, and so we're going to start bringing them out of there. So
How do you bring them out?
We do.
Some people watching us have never, they're looking at you and going, oh my gosh, she's beautiful and she's a ranch hand and she's educated. So how do you bring them out of the high country?
We will take the horses. We have a stock truck and we go up there, and we will do usually a bigger gather to get as many as we can. And then from there, my aunt and I will go up with the horses maybe once or twice a week, and we'll track them in the dirt, where they're at. We have an idea where their waters are and where they like to hang out, but sometimes they wander, and especially this year with the fire up there, it hit our permit pretty good. We're going to be having to travel pretty far and wide to see where those cattle might have moved off to, so we'll spend the whole day horseback up there tracking them and starting them down. The trails that they take to come home go all the way from about 7,000 foot elevation, and once we start them down that trail, they can come the whole way home. So they'll travel from about 7,000 feet all the way down to here about 3,000 feet, and the trail ends up right across from my aunt's house, right here on Jack Ranch Road.
So how long does that usually take?
If you were riding horseback and you did the whole trip, it would be a full day. I mean, you could probably do it in a day, but it would be kind of hard on the cattle. So usually when we do our bigger gather, it takes them about 3 days to get home. Sometimes the cattle beat us home, but we kind of go in stages to make it a little bit easier on them.
So our ranch is diversified in the sense that we have our guest ranch where folks come on vacation, and we have people from around the country and all over the world that come and stay with us. They stay in our cabins, we provide all of their meals, we take them horseback riding, they can go hiking, fishing, have a swimming pool. We have activities for the kids so they can get out and see the ranch. So it's really a way for us to share our ranch and tell a little bit of the story of how cattle are raised and give a face to agriculture, and we really enjoy sharing our way of life with visitors.
So tell me about a daily, just tell me about an average day on the ranch.
I don't think there is average days.
There's no average days.
No average days. Whatever your plan is, you're basically going to stomp that out within half an hour.
Because
Just
things
depending
change.
on what you find, yes, yes. Right now it's just checking cows. We're fortunate enough to have our own summer ground. We don't have to go on to government ground.
Okay.
So every other day it's checking cows and checking water. That's the big thing.
Is water.
Because we all run on, most everybody, I think, in that area of the country runs on springs.
Okay.
So you're constantly checking your springs. Last year, several of them went dry, and so you bring your cows home early.
Does that scare you?
Yeah, it does. 4
What
years
does that
of
mean?
it.
What does that mean if your springs run dry? What does it mean?
You have no water for your cows, so you have to move your cows, or you bring your cows home to no feed in the drought years. So the water is a precious commodity, not just for us, for everything, even the wildlife. So yeah, you just do what you can do.
Well, when I retired from pharmacy, I happened to meet a man who was a hunting guide in Alaska and at Tejon Ranch. And he was looking for another place to start a hunting club. And I was ready for that. So we've got a place for people to stay. And he's a professional hunting guide. Nobody goes out by themselves. He takes them out. And we hunt wild pigs. I have wild pigs, turkey. During season, wild pigs don't have a season.
Right.
But
Thank God.
yeah, but turkeys do, and that's one of our best seasons.
Okay.
And
So now when they come, do they buy a package to come here and they have a place to stay and there's meals?
Yeah, we
and-
provide dinner and breakfast.
Okay.
And we have a shooting range where when they get here, they go sight in their guns.
Okay.
And then he takes them out and shows them the ranch.
And this is all on Hollyhock?
Yes.
All on Hollyhock?
Yeah. Yeah. And what we've been developing some water for the wildlife too, in addition. So I've learned a lot from him about wildlife, some things I just never saw,
Right,
you know, that's just coming from a different perspective.
right. And so some of the things that you're doing to develop wildlife on your property?
Well, water is the main thing. What they need is water and feed. And the last drought years, our oak trees haven't produced acorns. And they are this year, because even though it was considered a drought last year, we got rain at the right time. And I have really good grass this year, and the acorns are back again. So the acorns are what feeds a lot of things, deer.
You think that's why we don't have a lot of deer now, is because of the acorns not being around?
Part of it, and even which would be from the drought.
Right.
And also the pig population, I think, was cut drastically, but they'll come right back. I saw 9 of them yesterday
So
in my front yard.
Pigs aren't real friendly to ranchers. I mean, they just tear up your...
Yes, they do. They dig.
Right.
So they tear up the...
They root and they just... And
They
tear
can
up.
be very destructive. They've ruined my yard. I had grass like this, and I don't right now because they've dug it all up. And a lot of times what they're looking for, though, is water. They'll dig up along the water lines, which is very interesting.
Oh,
because
that they
can
find
smell
them,
the water. And so that I've developed water off a little ways from my yard has kept them out of the yard, I think. So
That's very ingenious.
yeah.
But you guys also have another business.
Yes, one of the things that was of some foresight of my grandfather is that our ranch, he never put it into the Williamson Act, because he said our ranch was too small and cattle wouldn't always be able to be our sole income. And so we weren't in the Williamson Act, which allowed my dad and mom to diversify, and they started a 5-dog shooting range.
Which is on the ranch property.
Which is on the ranch property.
So let's explain to people who don't know what the Williamson Act is. Explain to them what it is.
It was a tax act that allowed ranchers to not be, to stay in ranching. It gave a tax break. So it helped with that. And it helped a lot of ranching families be able to continue to ranch. But because we don't have a large ranch, we had a very small operation because of my great-great-grandfather getting the smaller portions because he got the smaller property.
Well, we don't want people to think that all these breaks come to ranching families, because they really don't.
No.
But the Williamson Act was an act that was to be able to protect ranch lands,
right?
So that you didn't pay the high cost of taxes that you would if you were downtown Los Angeles.
Right.
You got a lower tax rate because it's not developed land. It was able to keep the original land from being developed.
Right.
What they didn't want your family to do, the government didn't want your family to sell it to some major developer in Los Angeles and have a bunch of sky rises behind us versus these beautiful oak trees.
Right.
So it was a benefit to, I think, the legacy of the state of California and its ranching families to be able to give you a tax credit.
Right.
So you started, your families didn't go into the Williamson Act. You wanted to make sure that you could have a second viable business on the ranch if the cattle industry had fallen or the market dropped or there was a fire or a drought or God knows whatever else that you guys go through. All of the above. Yes, all of the above. So you started 5-Dogs. So tell people what 5-Dogs is.
Well, 5-Dogs shooting range is just a place where people can shoot. It is the largest outdoor shooting range in the state of California. You can shoot long-range rifle, pistol, sporting clay, trail, that kind of thing. So,
I shoot a lot. We do a lot of clay shoots, and I love going to 5-Dogs because it's actually out in the environment. I mean, it might come over a
Right.
hill, it might go straight up in the air, it might come over rocks, and it just gives you a better, I think you have to be a better shooter to shoot at 5 dogs.
Yes, yes.
What about typical stuff? Do you have to deal with, you know, fallen down trees, fences that have been torn down or ran
Yeah.
through? So what are some of the other chores that you have to do on the ranch just to maintain it?
Yeah, fence is, we always joke that anybody fixing fence is good job security because there's always going to be fences to maintain. So yeah, and we'll, especially like spring is very busy and we'll be riding fences or walking fences to make sure that everything's clear before you turn cattle out in there. Fence work though is always just going to be a year-round thing. Checking waters, checking cattle to make sure they're not sick. Working with the horses, because we use them almost every day. We always have some that are in training and then some that are more established, and so there's always colts to work with, as you can see, and and other younger horses to ride in the evenings, and so it's not hard to fill the day.
It's not? I bet.
We have a commercial cattle ranch, meaning that we have cows that we raise cattle for market. And then we also have purebred Herefords, and those are our breeding stock that we develop our base herd for our cattle ranch to have good cows that we can continue good genetics. And so we sell bulls, and we were getting ready to have a man who did come yesterday. He's an ultrasound technician, and he ultrasounds our bulls, and he can tell how big the rib steaks will be and the marbling and all these great things. And so we do our heifers and our bulls. So
Your husband's grandparents didn't have that technology.
no, it's really changed. Yeah.
It changed. So you still actively work on the ranch with your husband every day.
Yes,
So tell me about a day in the life of Susie Snedden.
Okay. Well, it would be definitely our lives are governed by the seasons, and so we have like right now is our season. We're getting ready to have our bull sale, and so it's our son and his wife are partners with us,
Okay.
and so they've kind of taken our bull sale. And our number of bulls we're selling to a different level, and it's been really exciting because they're excited about what we're doing, and so we're getting ready for our bull sale in October, and we are also moving into our calving season, and so we're in the process of we have high country, which is at almost 5,000 feet, and so before winter we start moving our cattle down to our lower country, which goes clear down to what I would call the valley floor, which is about 800 feet elevation. So we just start moving our cattle down, and so every day it's just a matter of trying to respond to what's the next project, and it varies. And every day is new because you might have a broken pipeline or cattle got out somewhere, or
Or broken fence.
Broken fence.
Got to
anything.
fix fence. Now I
Keep
know
things
that you
going.
probably help just as much as the guys do, but I bet you cook a mean branding lunch.
Yeah, yes. I haven't been, probably I'd say the last, 7 or 8 years, maybe 10. I haven't really worked out. I get up in the morning and fix breakfast, and then we go out in the range and we gather whatever cattle we're working and bring them in. And then once we get them in the corrals, then I go and start preparation for lunch. Takes a couple of hours.
So you do a lot of stuff from scratch.
Everything.
Everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And you said a couple hour lunch. People watching this video may not understand that concept.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of hungry mouths to feed, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have anywhere from, like on the bigger branding days, we'll have probably about like 20 to 25 people. And then on just the family days, it'll be about anywhere from, 6 to 10. Whichever kids can come, because they're all off to school and doing other things too. So,
and the one thing that I think being involved in the cattle industry does for all families is teach a work ethic that
Absolutely.
cannot be taught. You can't truly get children to understand unless they have to do it. And I'll never forget the year. It was Christmas morning, and my husband says, "Okay, kids, we're going to go move the cattle now." And they were like, "What?" And Dale goes, "Well, there's not going to be anybody on the road. It's Christmas morning. So we're going to get out and move the cattle from one field to the other." And to this day, that is not their happiest memory growing up on the farm, and they absolutely refuse to work cattle on Christmas morning. But they do understand.
Dale had a good point.
They understand that, you know, when things have to be done, you know, they get them done. And so I wasn't raised with a country history, but I have grown to appreciate the wonderful things that are intangible that your children learn just by being with you, and the opportunity to help and be needed. Needed, that's the biggest thing.
I've talked to a lot of people about why you do this. I mean, when you think about the risk, fires, droughts, uncertainty in the land.
You know, there's only one way to say it, and it's your life. And it's a wonderful life in a lot of ways, and in a lot of other ways, as you like you say, with the fire and stuff, and that's heartbreaking. But you know, it's a time that you can be with your family, and you build a lot of good family, friends, relationships, and a lot of the family likes to come to you, see you because of the ranch, you know. They enjoy that, and it's just a way of life, and they would not leave it for anything. My husband and I go on vacations after about 7 days, he's chomping to come home. I think the longest we've gone is 10 days on a vacation. Yes, so it's his life, and
would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't.
You know, every woman from the cattle women that I've interviewed today and talked to, it's all about family and your heart and your commitment to the land.
Yes, yeah,
and you're no different.
Yeah.
One of the things that my dad wanted to make sure that I shared is that one of the reasons that the ranch has been able to survive is that the cattle are important, but they're not our family. And so when tough times come, we've taken a look at, we keep records on our cows, you know, and their calving rates and all the different things. And when tough times come, sometimes we have to cull. You know, some good cows have to go down the road because, you know, it's just, there's not enough grass.
Right.
But we try to keep our ranch so that it's self-sustaining. We rotational graze, we do different things to keep it sustaining. And when those things, you know, when tough choices have to be made, our family comes first, and we try to run our operation so that it runs that way. You know, that the family is first, and then the cattle are something that we do, but they're not more important than keeping everything else together.
So you've maintained your ranch. They call it sustainable land now, you know, with the times of changes, changing times. But you've sustained your ranch, and now you said 7th generation. Your girls are the 7th generation.
Yes.
And you've done a really good job at it.
Thank you.
I mean, all of these ranching families, you guys do a really good job at it, and it just kills me that Sacramento thinks they can do a better job. And I don't think they can.
I don't think they can.
I don't think they'd last a day in the high country.
No, I don't think so. It's just something that, it's a part of you. If it's not a part of you, you don't value the things that you don't have a connection with.
And you guys have a connection with the land.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of people in Sacramento that believe that government needs to tell people like ranchers, longtime ranching families, how to maintain their land.
No, we can do a better job. You know, I was thinking about that too. This is God's country, and He only lets us have it. You know, we're stewards of the land while we're here, but He'll be here after we're gone. But we have to take care of it. If we don't, we're not going to have any money, you know, our cattle won't have any grass. And I was thinking about the drought.
I'm in Sacramento quite a bit, and there are a lot of people up there that think that, you know, people from Berkeley and San Diego and a lot of the major metropolis areas in our state, they think that they know better how to help you guys run your land. And I know that there's a lot of things, laws that change, but I mean, if you could tell them one thing, I mean, you're a 6th generation. You start talking about your great, 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 great grandparents that came here and established this property. So tell me how you think that your love and your heart for this land will continue on to the next generation, and you really don't need government's help with that.
It's hard to sum that all up in one sentence, but you know, I think you'll never find people who care more about the land than somebody that lives on it day to day, and it's especially when it's a family involved, because it's not just about work anymore. It's about your entire well-being, and it's not about a 9 to 5 or anything else. It's about taking care of the land and what needs to be done to take care of the land and the livestock. And that kind of investment and that kind of care, you'll never find that from a distant entity. You'll only find that from being on the land and being there to take care of it. And you'll see, like, when you're living on the land and you have those generations behind you and looking forward to generations to come, like, you want to make sure that the land is well cared for, because it's not just about making a profit off of it, it's about taking care of what you've been given. And just that kind of love, like, you're not going to find that from being far away, I think.
That's a good answer. So what's one of the biggest obstacles that you face? As a business owner, an entrepreneur, you have a business on your ranch that isn't well received by Sacramento. I mean, hunting, and I mean, think about that.
Right. We think that eventually hunting will be phased out here in California. And
that's pretty sad.
Probably going to be pretty soon.
That's pretty sad.
And that's why I had the Boy Scouts up. I wanted them to learn how to shoot. That's why I enjoy having all these people that come up to hunt. Mm-hmm. I help to make dinner, and I have dinner with them, and they're very curious about the ranch, and I want them to keep the hunting tradition going. I think that's important.
Very important.
But I do think in California that hunting will eventually, you won't be able to hunt anything.
How does it make you feel?
Well, I think they're taking away our Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Our Second Amendment rights.
They sure are.
Bit by bit by bit.
It's like a frog in boiling water.
Yeah, they're regulating the ammunition now. Mm-hmm. And so I would say the biggest obstacles that I face as a rancher are regulations, which mm-hmm. we just talked about.
Right.
Regulations for hunting, mm-hmm. and regulations for water, I think, is going to be a huge deal. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but
that's
I think
a pretty scary thing.
They're starting to take
with.
Water rights.
Talk to those legislators
mm-hmm.
up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they really think they can run your ranch better than you can.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's something that you could say? I mean, you have your blood, sweat, and tears are in that land.
I would
family.
say listen to this story, but my story should represent a homeowner in a city.
Exactly.
And even a tenant renting an apartment, you know, they're renting an apartment that belongs to a private individual because of private property rights. And people need to wise up and realize America is as wonderful as it is because of the Constitution and private property rights.
You know, they don't even teach the Constitution very much in school anymore. You learn the preamble, but no in-depth study of that.
No, and it is foundational and miraculous, really, because there's never been a country like ours, never been a government system like ours.
And so you are very involved in making sure that the word spreads, because even though they're trying mm-hmm. to not allow you on your property mm-hmm. after sundown,
right?
Even
mm-hmm.
if you're doing, I mean, you could be saving a calf's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
mm-hmm.
you could have a coyote that
mm-hmm.
got a calf, or a mountain lion, something,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you could be out there rescuing that calf, and as soon as that sun goes down, you either have to leave that calf there, mm-hmm. that baby, you have to leave that baby calf there, mm-hmm. or you have to violate the law.
Yeah.
And that's really no different, like you said, from somebody who's renting an apartment or owns a car.
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be like the government coming in and going, you're not driving your car after 5 o'clock.
Right. No.
I wonder what people
It's-
renting an apartment would think about that.
No, well, they believe it's tyranny and totalitarian government, and so we don't want to go there. Let's
No.
all we want to work together. I'm proud of you, and we want to work together to raise awareness and let people know that's not how we want America to be.
Yes, I'm part of the 5th generation to live and work on the ranch.
Why'd you stay on the ranch? I mean, you're obviously bright, beautiful, talented. You're married. You have children. Your
No
sister
kids.
has children.
Yes, I have nieces and nephews.
You have
So
nieces and nephews.
there's something about the ranch that really, I think, just draws you back to it. With our parents, it was very important that we went away to college and got an education, and they told
Where
us.
was that for you?
I went to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and got a degree in ag business. And they told us that if we wanted to come back home, there was a place for us on the ranch, but if we wanted to do something else, that we needed to do whatever it was that we were passionate about. And when I left for school, I wasn't too sure if I'd be coming back home or maybe doing something else, but the longer that I was away, the more that I realized how fortunate I was to have that legacy to go home to. And decided after I'd graduated from Cal Poly to return home to the ranch and help continue the family business.
I think they're in the same position. Josh might be a little bit older than the girls.
He's 43.
He's 43, so they're in their 30s. They just turned 30. Do you ever, I'm not trying to bring up anything negative, but do you ever have a fear, like your grandmother saved this ranch?
Yes, I do every day.
And now it's you and Rusty,
Yeah.
right? Do you have a fear that, I mean, I know you're not going to be the generation where something happens, but do you,
Well, I
you
don't
say
know
kids
that.
are pulled in different directions.
They're pulled in different directions, and you don't want to, as my mom said, you don't want to rule from the grave. You don't want to say you can never, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in our lifetime with our regulations, with how tough it is to be in agriculture.
Is that your biggest fear, is the regulatory environment from the state and federal government?
That's one of them, and I think lack of education, not just for the public, but for the governing bodies that tell us what we can and must do and can't do. There's no education. I think if they had to, if they could come spend a week with us.
I told one of you guys, I don't remember who it was, but I told one of you, none of them would last a day in the high country. A day in the high country wouldn't happen.
But it would be a gigantic education for them, and I don't think, and I'm not necessarily saying it's their fault. How hard would it be to educate yourself on every enterprise in the state?
This is a pretty phenomenal enterprise, though.
It's huge, but it gets smaller by the day. Smaller by the day, and not just cattle ranchers, but agriculture in its whole, I think.
It's a food source. It's a food source. It feeds us.
I don't think the
work you put in on that ranch feeds me.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, and it's been said time and time again, is do you honestly think that I would produce something that I wouldn't want my own children to eat? Really? No.
Exactly.
And if your kids eat it, my kids eat it.
Is there anything about the lifestyle that you've had that you would change?
Not the ranching part.
Not
no,
the
I
ranching
love the
part.
ranch. I love the land, and it's all I know. I was born on the ranch, and have been there. Well, I was born 2 miles in a car, but and I was born because my mother told my dad about 5 in the morning it was time to go to the hospital. Well, it was 25 miles on a dirt road in an old 29 Chrysler. But my dad said, well, I got to go pump water for the cattle first. And he did, and it took an hour. And so by the time they got started, we only got 2 miles from home, and I was born. And they just wrapped me in a dirty sheet and brought me home, and I've been home ever since.
And you've been here ever since. And you wouldn't change a thing?
No, not really. I might have changed having a few girlfriends or something, but not the ranch life. I loved the ranch life, and I still do.
What were some of the hurdles? Did you have
Well,
hurdles with legislation? Did you have hurdles that affected the ranch? Did you, I mean, are there things, I mean, if I could make you queen for the day, what would you change in order to benefit ranching families?
You know, both of what you said is true. One of the big hurdles has been this drought that California has been in, and for part of California, it's into its 5th year of drought. This past year was a little bit better in our country in terms of rainfall and everything, so it alleviated a lot of that. But it was nip and tuck. You know, you have to cull your herd tremendously because there just isn't the forage out there, and so you don't want to, you know, you don't want the cattle to suffer, and you don't want to have to spend too much in terms of feeding them with alternative sources such as hay. And so you've got to cull your herd, and that's difficult to do when you've spent years building it up with the genetics and all of that you want your herd to have. So that's been a challenge. Legislatively, it continues to be a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge in California. And I think as an association, what I would like people to know is that we respect the land and we respect the animals, and we want to continue to be here. We are sustainable. When you're talking about going into the 7th generation, there's
150 years.
There's some sustainability there.
And government hasn't had to tell you how to do that.
No, ma'am,
Yeah.
they haven't. And what we would like is a little bit less regulation, because every time you have to, one more layer of you have to do this to comply with this, then that takes away time and effort that a family puts towards taking care of the land and the cattle, because you're complying with paperwork or other things that the government says they need to know about and need to have. And so, you know, we could do with less of that. And we think that private property rights, water rights are the foundation of this nation. In terms of why did people come to the United States? Because they could have their slice of the dream here. Okay, there was that opportunity to be entrepreneurs and to rise above what your family had known before. And so we want that to continue. We don't want to dismiss that at all, because that is dismissing who we are as a nation if we're not holding true to those rights that we have. And so we are proud to be putting food on the plates of not only the American people, but people around the world. And we know that that's an important responsibility, and we take it very seriously. And we love doing it as a family.